Hello again, everyone. It's great seeing you again. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'd like to welcome you to Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. Up first on the hazardous weather graphic, Alaska Peninsula, Cold Bay, False Pass, and King Cove, those areas. High wind warning out. Have it colored as a watch here, but it did go to a warning here, or like in the last half hour. For the Alaska Peninsula, and that's for another storm coming up, not the one coming through today. That one's already gone by. We've got another one coming up, so look for gusts anywhere from 70 to 80 miles an hour tonight, overnight tonight here for the peninsula. And then there's a high wind warning out for the Alaska Range that kicks into effect at noon Monday and continues through Tuesday. And that's for southerly winds, south-southeast winds increasing to 80 miles an hour in gusts during that time frame. And then eastern, or the 40-mile country, upper Tanana Valley there, that's a wind chill advisory that's out for tonight. Wind chills 35, 45 below zero. And then back here to the west, blizzard warning out for the Kuskokwim Delta, Nunivak Island area. And that's for winds gusting at 45 miles an hour. Tonight into tomorrow, and let's see, 45 mile an hour wind gusts, I believe is 3 to 5 inches of snow expected to fall, or 4 to 6. Will be enough though to create visibilities down to less than a quarter mile in blowing snow at times. And then up the Yukon, or the lower Yukon River Valley there, and then up into the Koyukuk, lower Koyukuk. We've got a winter storm watch out for 5 to 10 inches of snow, winds gusting 30 miles an hour, so that'll also bring visibilities down as well. Winter weather advisory here south coast of the Seward Peninsula, Nome over toward White Mountain, on down toward Unalakleet into the Yukon Delta, and that's for conditions not quite as bad as in the warning areas. Pick up some snow and wind, but not quite as bad. Blizzard warning also out St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast. And that's winds gusting 65 miles an hour out of the north and northeast with maybe 2 to 3 inches of new snow. And heading up to the north, wind chill advisory for tonight. I believe it goes until sometime before midnight. It stays out here for the eastern north slope area. And then the Koyukuk Valley there, Bettles, winter weather advisory for tomorrow there with snow, areas of blowing snow. Will cause visibilities to be reduced to a half mile or less at times. So going into satellite imagery, some remnant clouds here coming northward really brought maybe inch of snow to the Nome area today. Otherwise, the amounts were pretty light there. Some areas could have seen more. I just didn't see the report if there was. And some clouds spreading eastward there. Kind of a break here to the south of that. Nice day, south central Alaska into Prince William Sound with some sunshine. Next storm coming up here, next front pushing moisture, rain, and snow, or a mixture of. In case of AKwx, they picked up about 2/10 of an inch, started this afternoon there in the form of rain. Mainly rain along the Alaska Peninsula, and also temperatures in the mid-40s over the Unalaska area. They had about 2/10 of an inch today, while Cold Bay picked up around 1/3 of an inch of precipitation. And then off to the east, we had some lingering rain and snow showers. Snow, Juneau area, northern areas saw snow. Picked up another couple inches there. Otherwise, on down to the south, had about 2/10 of an inch of rainfall there at Klawock and Sitka. So nothing heavy, and trying to taper off, but it's probably going to continue through tonight to some extent. And then there looks like there is more increased clearing farther to the west. But also this moisture may catch up to it. They'll start streaming eastward, so that's going to keep it kind of unsettled there through tomorrow. And the next system, we have this first one moving through, the next one really not on the chart yet, the northern cloud shield of it right here in the center, just down to the south a little bit there. It's actually right there. First one here coming northward. This is really going to weaken rapidly. It's going to kind of split apart. The front will dissipate tonight. This will pull back to the west, but currently seeing gusts 50 miles an hour along the southwest coast there, Cape Newnham and Platinum. Areas gusting up 35 miles an hour, King Salmon, and then Cold Bay had gusts of 50 miles an hour, and Equin Island, 65 mile an hour gusts there, but that was earlier today before the front pushed through. It's lightened up there with more showery conditions and some clearing here, and then the colder air back to the west there, wrapping around that parent low, 975 millibars for the western Aleutians. And then this light moisture up here, heaviest, but it wasn't that heavy as I mentioned, up over the Seward Peninsula, and just isolated showers or flurries farther to the east, and high pressure over the northwest Canada there, keeping it cold but not quite as cold. Minus 27 this afternoon, I believe, at Arctic Village and Fort Yukon, so not quite as far below zero as you have been. It's going to be trending upward over the next couple of days. And for tonight, you can see still kind of a trough here between the high to the north and some higher pressure down to the south. And westerly flow at aloft keeps it just unsettled. Snow showers north, rain, snow mix south, but light amounts. Look for rain, heavy at times, gale force winds here coming into Kodiak Island. And the next storm coming up, the first one just gets absorbed by this one, 968 millibars, comes right across eastern Aleutians. 3 a.m. tomorrow, roughly between Dutch Harbor and St. George Island. And the blizzard warning, the Kuskokwim Delta, blowing snow, Yukon Delta. Those conditions also increasing over the Kuskokwim Valley to the Alaska Range. Moisture surging northward here, so clouds will continue to increase, thicken and lower southern Alaska with increasing chances of snow or rain for Kodiak, or a mixture of for the western North Gulf Coast areas, and stays dry, but increasing clouds here, say for the Kobuk Valley, Seward Peninsula, but mostly clear north slope in the eastern interior areas. And another low, that one finally diving off to the southeast a little bit, we'll see tomorrow, moves to this position as the stronger system goes due north just south of Nunivak Island. Strong winds developing here across southern Alaska. See Kodiak Island up across Cook Inlet. Western Alaska Range could see gusts channeled that passes there up to 70 miles an hour, like Sparavon, and then snow and blowing snow developing over the western interior. Those winter storm warnings out. Winter storm warning will end for the Kuskokwim Delta and continue for St. Lawrence Island. Cold air wrapping back around, pulls snow back in toward very close to the Pribilofs late tomorrow afternoon. Otherwise, kind of a break there for the eastern Aleutians, and moisture sliding into the Panhandle. Again, snow north, rain along the coast, or a mixture of farther to the east. Outlook for Tuesday. A new wave develops along this slowing frontal boundary here and kind of pulls northward toward Prince William Sound, and that's going to increase the winds here, especially on the central and north coast of the Panhandle. Rain south again, lighter amounts of possibly snow. Klondike Highway, Haines up to Skagway. And areas of snow as this low center tracks eastward, stops its northward movement, and actually weakens as it pulls into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. So look for snow, periods of, mostly cloudy skies, snow showers back farther to the west and into the Kuskokwim Valley. Snow, maybe some blowing snow with a much weakened frontal boundary now as it pushes northward and eastward here with an area of snow. Next system bringing possible gale force winds and rain and snow, or snow trending toward rain for the western and eventually the central Aleutians. Probably won't hit the AKwx area until Tuesday evening. Lows for tonight, minus 30s below zero in the north, but not quite as cold as you have been, and above freezing in Alaska Peninsula with a mild southerly flow. Highs tomorrow below zero in the north again, but not quite as far below. Otherwise 35 to 45 here along the Alaska Peninsula.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to aviation, big area IFR here with all the moisture and the storm coming up into the eastern and southeast Bering Sea, kind of banking up along the Alaska Peninsula, but some of that will still spill up in toward Togiak Bay and the Kuskokwim Delta. IFR up along, and especially the east side of the western Alaska Range. eastern side of the Kenai Peninsula up into Passage Canal, western Prince William Sound, but not reaching the coast, and up to the north and east, VFR. And then for the afternoon, that whole batch shifts northward here to the Seward Peninsula and eastward there up over toward the Yukon River, with VFR holding over the North Slope Water Coast, Upper Yukon Valley, down into all areas north of the Alaska Range. VFR kind of extending back and then south. You can see the downsloping off the Alaska Range looks pretty good for the Kuskokwim Valley. And then IFR, North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound into the Panhandle during the afternoon. Marginal VFR with some VFR trying to break out over the western central Aleutians. And that becomes a little more widespread Tuesday morning. Pretty good area of VFR out here over the southwest Bering, but marginal for Adak and Atka on up along the Alaska Peninsula. VFR Kodiak and kind of a swath of that up to the northwest here in between the frontal boundary here, and then some more moisture along the coast, which extends IFR all the way up to the western North Slope, and then eastward along the south side of the Brooks Range there, with still IFR hanging up on the south side of the Alaska Range, and narrowband IFR for the Panhandle for the afternoon. Not too bad, some VFR there, Prince of Wales Island up into the central inside waters, and maybe even Port Alexander, and then marginal VFR elsewhere. Yakutat right on the IFR zone there, and that extends back across the Kenai Peninsula. Northern Cook Inlet, Madawaska Valley, Tuesday afternoon looks IFR, and that band all the way up to the Brooks Range, western North Slope, coming back around St. Lawrence Island, right on down the coast, inland over the Kuskokwim Valley, Dillingham, Togiak, on up to Sleepmute. And for the passes, Anatuvik, VFR tomorrow for one more day. Same forecast for Adigan, another day of VFR. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR, lowest conditions, eastern approaches, definitely IFR there. And then going out the west side, you'll get into some VFR. Very turbulent though. And for rainy, IFR eastern approach, otherwise marginal, better west and windy. Possible IFR southern entrance, otherwise maybe marginal through the pass, and definitely VFR out the north entrance into the valley there. And for Isabel, marginal VFR south side and maybe in the pass, VFR to the north. Mentasta, I think the low or marginal VFR will be on toward that southern entrance, otherwise VFR. And for Tanita, marginal VFR at times, and Chilkoot and White, or Portage IFR, Chilkoot and White marginal trending toward IFR in the late afternoon. Freezing levels at the surface across southeast coast, North Gulf Coast, north of Bristol Bay into Kuskokwim Bay here, and just north of the Pribilof Islands, 2,000 feet, are edging northward here to the Barren Islands, Bristol Bay, and 4,000 for Kodiak. Icing areas of considerable moderate rime icing here ahead of that frontal boundary, sliding northward tomorrow and even into Prince William Sound. And then taking a look at the jet stream. High pressure ridging here in the Gulf of Alaska. So we got the flow from the south here, this system coming northward, another one dropping down, trying to develop there, but this is the main one here with that 90 to 100 knot jet, back around, up and over, 70 knots, just grazing the east side of the southern panhandle. 9,000 foot winds, mostly westerly there for the southeast coast, 25 to 30 knots, but strong southerly winds here with the gradient between the ridging to the east and this strong low coming due north. So we've got 50 to 65 knot winds coming into, well, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, all the way back out to the southwest coast. Southwest 50 for the Fox Islands, and then diminishing as you head west there. Pretty light up to the north. 9,000 feet looks like, or I'm sorry, 3,000 feet. Call it about 40 to 60 knots here with this storm, and about 10 to 15 for the Panhandle, lighter up to the north, and 40 knots for the Pribilofs, and lighter out over the western Aleutians. Turbulence-wise, pretty good chance seeing severe turbulence here for the western Alaska Range on down into Iliamna Lake, Kamishap Gap area there, otherwise moderate chop.
On March 11, 2011, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake off the Pacific coast of Japan generated a tsunami. This series of ocean waves sped towards the island nation, with waves reaching 24 feet high. The result was devastation and utter destruction. Towns were engulfed by water and swept away. Farmland was flooded. Tens of thousands of lives were lost. The National Police Agency reported damages to hundreds of roads, bridges, and more than 100,000 buildings. The surging water flooded rivers and destroyed harbors. In some areas along the coast, tsunami waves reached 6 miles inland. Tsunamis not only cause severe damage when they first strike land, but also as the water recedes back to sea. Tsunamis can inflict this type of damage because of some unique features. As tsunami waves travel across ocean basins, they may be as little as a few centimeters high, but they extend down to the ocean floor. This is different than traditional waves, which are only surface features. Tsunamis can also travel hundreds of miles per hour in the open ocean. As these waves approach a coast, the shallowing ocean floor slows the waves down and pushes the water mass upwards. The quicker the ocean floor transitions from deep to shallow, the greater potential for a higher wave height. So, tsunamis that experience this sudden shift into shallow water can have the height and momentum to pack a serious punch. Unfortunately, Japan found itself in this scenario. This image shows how abruptly the Japanese islands rise out of the ocean. Other coastal areas in the region have much more gradual slopes. The earthquake on March 11th was the most powerful known to hit Japan, and the tsunami it created had the necessary ingredients to make it such a deadly and destructive force. "80 miles east of Japan, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake rocks the ocean floor. This disturbance causes a transfer of energy from the seafloor to the ocean, generating a series of ocean waves, known as a tsunami. In about 20 minutes, waves strike the Japanese coastline. Other nations go on high alert because the tsunami will propagate or spread throughout the Pacific Ocean. As the tsunami radiates outward from Japan, it encounters a variety of ocean features, such as ridges and underwater volcanoes, which guide the tsunami and create a complex pattern of scattering and reflective waves. In 8 hours, the waves reach the Hawaiian Islands, and in 9.5 hours, they hit the west coast of the United States. In 16 hours, the tsunami reaches the Indian Ocean and New Zealand, and by 22 hours, the entire Pacific Ocean had been affected. The impact of a tsunami can be highly variable because of the complicated interactions with ocean features and coastline elements. Wave height and speed will differ from place to place. Since tsunamis can be hundreds of miles long and travel thousands of miles away from where they originated, they are considered a worldwide threat when they form. These are the sounds of a tsunami warning. They alert residents that a killer wave is about to strike. These sirens, however, are just a small part of the sophisticated warning systems that played a role in Japan and in the US during the Pacific Ocean tsunami in March 2011. Most tsunamis are generated by an undersea earthquake. Fortunately, Japan has one of the most advanced earthquake early warning systems in the world. It detects tremors, calculates the epicenter, and sends out warnings from over 1,000 seismographs scattered throughout the country. The Japan Meteorological Agency issues the warnings and sends alerts to television and radio channels, the internet, and mobile phone networks. When the earthquake struck 80 miles offshore, warnings were generated in about 3 seconds. The tsunami warnings came 3 minutes later. These take longer because more complex calculations are involved and must factor in ocean data. Since the first tsunami wave struck the coastline within 20 minutes, the advanced warning provided some residents with crucial minutes to reach a safe area. While the earthquake sent powerful tsunami waves westward toward Japan, the tsunami also propagated east into the Pacific Ocean. Here, warnings are issued by the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, operated by NOAA in Hawaii. NOAA maintains a large network of buoys with ocean floor sensors that are strategically positioned in the earthquake-prone zones of the Pacific. This system collects vital ocean data for tsunami forecasting. On March 11th, only 25 minutes after the earthquake struck, the first buoy station measured the tsunami and relayed information to Hawaii. Scientists used this data to run models and issue forecasts and warnings to nations throughout the Pacific. From there, local emergency managers decided what actions were appropriate to take for public safety. The earthquake and resulting tsunami devastated the Japanese coastline, causing damage that will take years to repair. While we can't prevent these forces of nature from happening, our early warning systems can help us prepare for the dangers headed our way.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis, well, still north of the Pribilofs, and looks like kind of close in there to St. Matthew Island, give or take, and a little bit of melting due to the winds yesterday there, Bristol Bay. And that's going to continue here with that, well, the storm today coming up, and then the next one coming up tomorrow. So this portion of the ice edge is going to be kind of beaten back to the north, and while northerly winds will tend to push it southward out here to the west, and that'll continue into the midweek. Okay, for the coastal water forecast, south to southeast winds 15 to 20 knots on the north coast, seas 8 to 9 feet, and then southwest 15. Not too bad tomorrow there for the south coast, 10-foot seas, and central southern inside waters, southerlies 15 knots, seas 3 feet, Lynn Canal south at 10 with 2-foot seas. And going to Tuesday, big increase in the winds here, full gales coming in, southeast 40-45 knots, or south 40 knots, southeast 40 knots on the south coast, central coast, southeast 45 knots, seas over 20 feet, and then southwest 45 knots there. For the extreme north coast with seas almost 25 feet, small craft advisories for Lynn Canal, southerlies at 25 knots, southeast 20 for Stevens Passage, and southeast 25 for Clarence Strait with seas at 8 feet. And Prince William Sound tomorrow, east winds coming up to 30 knots, seas building to 6 feet, southeast 30, 7-foot seas for the eastern North Gulf Coast, turn east 25 with 8-foot seas, and then for the Barren Islands, southeast at 30, 11-foot seas, gale warnings. Kamishak Bay, east 35 knots, and small craft advisories for Southern Cook Inlet, northeast at 30 with seas building to 10 feet and 20-knot northeast winds north of the Forelands. Much lighter winds here for Cook Inlet on Tuesday. Call it southeast, but down to 10 knots here. Seas still running about 6 feet in the southern inlet, and then southwest 15 with 7-foot seas for Kamishak Bay, southwest 20 of the Barren Islands. Seas 16 feet with that 20-knot wind. South 25, small craft advisories here for the western North Gulf Coast, but storm warnings out for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Southeast winds 50 knots. Prince William Sound just under storm warning. Southeast 45, seas up to 12 feet. And for Kodiak Island, 35-knot gales here on the east side from the south. Shelikof Strait, southeast 30. Same thing for Bristol Bay, southeast 30 knots. Storm warnings, Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, southerlies 55 knots, seas 21 feet. Southwest gales turn southerly at 35 knots on up toward Kodiak. And then for Tuesday, still gales here, but not quite as bad. We'll lose the storms and minimum gales. West-southwest 35 knots, seas running 18 to 19 feet or so, under 20 feet, and south 30 for Bristol Bay. And then we've got westerlies 30 knots, Castle Cape to Sitkinak, Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, southwest 25, seas 7 to 17 feet. Fox Islands tomorrow, gale warnings. West winds 35 to 40 knots, Unmac Island. Southwest 40 to 45 knots on Alaska Island, seas 20 to 25 feet there. And west-northwest 30 to 35 knots, Athabasca. And northwest 30 to 35 knots here for the western Aleutian zones. Moving into Tuesday, those winds swing around to the east with ahead of that next system, or southeast, east-southeast, but coming up to 40 knots, seas back to 10 feet. Southeast 30 knots, small craft advisories, Kiska to Amchitka, and then west-southwest 20-25 for Athabasca. Eastern Aleutians for Tuesday. Again, gales continue for Unalaska Island, 35 to 40 knots, 20-foot seas. Unmac Island, west 30 knots. And for the southwest coast, gales out. Southeast 40 knots, Kuskokwim Delta Coast, Yukon Delta Coast, east 35. St. Lawrence Island, northeast at 40, turn northerly at 40 knots for St. Matthew Island, and north 20 for the Pribilofs. Outlook for Tuesday, east 20 for Norton Sound, 30 knot northerlies there for St. Lawrence Island. And you can see going back to a north-northwest, so don't look for much of a retreat in the ice edge out here. And then for the Pribilofs, northwest 30 knots and west 30 for the Kuskokwim Delta Coast. Eastern Beaufort Sea, central side too. Pretty light winds, south-south, or basically southerly 5 to 10 knots, north 10 on the west side. Picking up here, brisk wind advisories from Cape Thompson to Wales. 30-knot winds the next day, brisk wind advisories all the way up the west side of the Arctic coast from Wales up to, say, Point Ley, then 20-knot winds central and eastern coast. For tonight, again, here's a big storm coming up. The original one coming in today kind of dissipates. This one kind of just absorbs it and takes over with the blizzard warning out, or high wind warning, Alaska Peninsula, and blizzard warning Kuskokwim Delta tonight, blizzard warning St. Lawrence Island, high wind warning for the Alaska Range for winds gusting to 80 miles an hour.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.